Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September meeting of the Wilmot Township Committee of Adjustment. Before we begin, I'd ask Ms. Lalonde to read the land acknowledgement. Oh, please, would you? Yes.
We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinabeg, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce members of our committee. We have Mr. Steve Miller, Ms. Christine Kaler, Mr. Bowman, and Ms. Louise Lalonde. Also with us this evening, we have Mr. Andrew Martin, who is the Manager of Planning and Economic Development Officer for the Township, and Mr. Cameron Miller, who is a planner for the Township and will be introducing each of the applications this evening. My name is Wayne Roth. We are an independent body appointed by Wilmot Township Council, and we have the power to make minor changes to existing zoning regulations and to approve some changes to existing non-conforming uses, as well as to give consent. Each applicant will be notified in writing of the decision of this committee within 10 days, and with that decision will be instructions on how it can be appealed. Any decision made by this committee can be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, who will then hold a meeting and make a final and binding decision. Only the applicant and certain prescribed public agencies can appeal this committee's decision. If the decision on a minor variance or consent is not appealed, it will become final and binding after 20 days from the date of this meeting. The format of the meeting will be as follows. We will ask Mr. Miller to introduce each application, and the applicant, if they wish to do so, can add any comments. After that, anyone else in the audience will be invited to come forward if they have any concerns. Then we will turn it over to members of committee, and then the committee will make its decision. Is there any conflicts of interest this evening under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, so I will ask Mr. Miller to introduce the first application.
Thank you, Chair Roth. The first application is minor variance A12/23 concerning 1366 Wilby Road. And so this application is proposing to reduce the front yard setback of a covered front porch from 10 meters to approximately 5.6 meters. So the property is currently developed with a single detached dwelling, and the applicant is proposing to construct both a rear and front porch to the existing dwelling. And the current house is approximately 7.5 meters from the front property line, which is deficient, but is considered legal non-compliant because it predates the township zoning bylaw. So any addition to this would be required to comply with the current setback set out in the township zoning bylaw, which is a front yard setback of 10 meters. And so with the placement of the current house and the front porch set to encroach further into the setback, achieving that is not possible, so therefore the applicant is applied for a variance reduction to the front yard setback. And circulating the application, we did not receive any concerns to the public, and we also circulated the Township's Infrastructure Services Department, and they had no concerns with the reduction in the front yard setback relative to a township road.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Obviously, there's no one here from the applicant's standpoint, or not from the public either, so I'll turn it over to members of committee. Any comments or questions? If not, I would ask someone to bring forth the motion to approve. Moved by Ms. Lalonde, seconded by Mr. Bowman. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Miller, would you introduce the next application?
Yes, thank you, Chair Roth. Moving on to consent application B05/23, which is relating to 196 and 198 Snyder's Road East in Baden. So this application is proposing to divide ownership of a semi-detached dwelling. So the property is Zone Z3 residential and is developed with a semi-detached dwelling that is under construction, which is almost finished. And the applicant is simply proposing to split the subject property in half in order to divide ownership of that semi. The severed and retained parcels would well exceed the minimum lot area requirements for a semi-detached dwelling within Zone 3, and they've received their necessary approvals as part of the building permit process for the access permits from the Region of Waterloo, as well as the lock grading and drainage plans were approved by the Township's Infrastructure Services Department. We did not receive any concerns or comments from the public in circulating the application, and staff recommend approval of the consent.
Thank you. Obviously, there's no one here from the applicant and or the public, is my understanding. So I'll turn it over to members of committee again. Is there any comments or questions or concerns? If not, would someone bring forth the motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Ms. Kaler. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. That concludes the applications we have in front of us this evening. Our last order of business is the approval of minutes of our last meeting. Would someone bring forth that motion? Moved by Ms. Lalonde, seconded by Ms. Kaler. Any discussion? All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Do we have any applications for October?
None at the moment, but if I could confirm availability for October the 4th. Will we have everybody here?
Sounds good.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you all for attending.